They called me just the hospital orderly. Said it with that dismissive tone people use when they think you don't matter. And I was pushing an empty gurney down the hallway when the doctor froze mid-sentence, turned to look at me with an expression I'll never forget. And in that moment, everything in that emergency room changed. I'm 46 years old, been working as an orderly at Cook County Hospital in Chicago for 23 years, the kind of job most people don't even know exists until they're lying in a hospital bed and someone like me wheels them to surgery or helps them to the bathroom. And I have short, graying hair that's thinning on top, a graying beard I keep trimmed short, tired brown eyes that have seen more than most people can imagine, and I wear simple scrubs, light blue or green depending on what's clean, with a small ID badge clipped to my chest that nobody ever bothers to read, and I carry myself with the posture of someone who's learned to be invisible, shoulders slightly hunched, head down, moving through hallways like a ghost because that's what people expect from someone in my position. That afternoon started like any other. I'd already transported 6 patients to imaging, cleaned 3 rooms after discharges, restocked supply closets, and helped nurses move a combative patient who was fighting sedation. And around 2 p.m., I was wheeling an empty gurney back to the storage area when I heard shouting coming from Trauma Bay 3, voices raised, tension thick enough to feel from the hallway. And I slowed down because in a hospital, loud voices usually mean something's gone wrong, and my instinct after 23 years is to pay attention, even when I'm not supposed to be involved. I pushed my gurney past the open doorway and saw the scene inside. A middle-aged man lying on the bed, his wife standing next to him crying, 2 doctors arguing over his chart, and 3 nurses trying to prep him for what looked like an emergency procedure. And one of the doctors, a younger guy, maybe in his early 30s, with the confidence of someone who just finished his residency, was saying loudly, "We need to get him to surgery now. His appendix is clearly inflamed. If we wait any longer, it could rupture." And the other doctor, an older woman with gray hair pulled back tight, was shaking her head, saying, "His presentation isn't consistent with appendicitis. We're missing something." And they kept going back and forth while the patient groaned in pain and his wife begged someone to just help him. I stopped in the hallway, pretended to adjust something on my gurney, and I listened, not because I was trying to eavesdrop, but because something about the whole situation felt wrong. The way the patient was holding his abdomen, the way his breathing was shallow and rapid, the way his skin had that grayish pallor that I'd seen too many times before. And I've been in this hospital long enough to recognize patterns, to know when something doesn't add up, and this didn't add up. But I'm just the orderly, just the guy who pushes beds and mops floors, so I kept my mouth shut and started to move on. Then the younger doctor saw me standing there and snapped, "What are you doing? We need that gurney in here. Move!" And I pushed it into the room, positioned it next to the bed, and he said without looking at me, "Help us transfer him. We're taking him to surgery right now." And I moved into position, but the older doctor said firmly, "No, we're not until I'm certain of the diagnosis." And the younger doctor threw his hands up and said, "We don't have time for this. Every minute we wait increases the risk." And the wife started crying harder, saying, "Please, just do something. He's in so much pain." I stood there next to the gurney, hands ready to help with the transfer, and I watched the patient, really watched him. The way his right hand was pressed against his lower abdomen, but his left hand kept moving up toward his chest. The way he was trying to take deep breaths, but couldn't seem to fill his lungs. The way his lips had a slight blue tinge that nobody else seemed to notice. And I recognized what I was seeing. I'd seen it before, years ago, in another patient who everyone thought had appendicitis until it was almost too late. And I knew I should say something, but who was I to speak up? I wasn't a doctor, I wasn't a nurse, I was just the orderly, and they'd already made it clear what they thought of me. The younger doctor started preparing the patient for transfer, told the nurses to get the surgical team ready, and the older doctor was still protesting, still saying something was wrong with the diagnosis. And I stood there frozen, torn between staying silent like I was supposed to and speaking up because I knew in my gut that if they took this man to surgery for his appendix, they were going to open him up and find something completely different, something worse, and by then it might be too late. And I thought about my own father, who died because doctors missed a diagnosis, who died because nobody listened when he said something felt wrong, and I couldn't let that happen again, not when I could see it so clearly. So I did something I'd never done in 23 years. I cleared my throat and said quietly, "Excuse me, and nobody heard me. They kept arguing, kept preparing the patient, and I said it louder, "Excuse me, doctors." And this time the younger doctor turned to me with irritation and said, "What is it? We're busy here." And I looked at him, then at the older doctor, and I said, keeping my voice calm and respectful, "I think you should check his heart. I don't think this is appendicitis." And the room went completely silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. The younger doctor's face went red, and he said, "Are you serious right now? You're an orderly. You don't have medical training. You need to stay in your lane." And I felt my face flush with embarrassment, but I held my ground and said, "I've been working in this hospital for 23 years. I've seen thousands of patients, and I've seen this before. A man came in with similar symptoms. Everyone thought it was his appendix, but it was his heart. He was having an inferior wall myocardial infarction, and by the time they figured it out, he'd already coded." And the older doctor's eyes widened. She looked at me with sudden attention, and she said, "What specifically are you seeing?"
I pointed at the patient, kept my voice steady, and said, "His pain is radiating to his chest. He's having trouble breathing. His lips are cyanotic, and if you look at his neck, you can see his jugular veins are distended. Those aren't appendicitis symptoms. Those are cardiac symptoms." And the older doctor immediately moved to the patient, started examining him more carefully, and the younger doctor stood there looking stunned and angry. And she said urgently, "Get me an EKG now." And within 30 seconds, they had the machine hooked up, and the readout showed exactly what I'd suspected. He was having a heart attack, not appendicitis. And if they'd taken him to surgery, if they'd put him under anesthesia with his heart in that condition, he probably would have died on the table. The room erupted into controlled chaos. The older doctor started barking orders. Nurses rushed to administer medication. Someone called for a cardiology consult, and they stabilized him quickly, got him on the right treatment, and the whole time I just stood there next to my empty gurney, watching. And nobody said anything to me. Nobody acknowledged what had just happened. And after about 10 minutes, the older doctor looked at me and said quietly, "Thank you." And I nodded and started to leave, but the younger doctor stepped in front of me, his face still red, and he said, "You had no right to interfere with medical decisions. You're not qualified to diagnose patients." And before I could respond, the older doctor said sharply, "He just saved that man's life, and if you'd listened to me instead of being so arrogant, we would have caught it ourselves." After the patient was transferred to the cardiac unit and the crisis was over, the older doctor found me in the supply room where I was restocking linens, and she said, "I need to know your name." And I told her, and she wrote it down and said, "I'm recommending you for a hospital commendation. What you did today was extraordinary." And I shook my head and said, "I was just doing what felt right. I've seen a lot in 23 years. You learn to recognize patterns." And she smiled and said, "That's called clinical experience, and it's valuable regardless of what your job title is. You should consider going to nursing school. You'd be excellent." And I appreciated the sentiment, but I knew it wasn't realistic. I was 46 years old with bills to pay and a family to support. But it felt good to be seen, to be recognized, even if just for a moment. The patient's wife found me later that evening, tracked me down in the hallway, and she grabbed my hands and said through tears, "The doctor told me what you did. She said, 'You're the reason my husband is alive. Thank you so much.'" And I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and told her I was glad he was okay. And she said, "I didn't even see you in the room. I didn't know you were there, but you were paying attention when nobody else was." And those words stayed with me, because that's what I do. I pay attention. I notice things. I've been invisible for so long that people forget I'm there, but I'm always watching, always listening, always learning. I'm still an orderly. I still push gurneys and transport patients and clean rooms and do all the things that nobody notices until they're not done. I still wear the same simple scrubs and the same small ID badge that nobody reads, and most doctors and nurses still walk past me without a second glance, and that's okay. I don't need recognition. I don't need validation. But what I do need is for people to understand that everyone in this hospital, from the surgeons to the janitors, has value, has knowledge, has something to contribute. And sometimes the person you dismiss as just the orderly is the person who's been here long enough to see what you're missing, to know what you don't know, and to save a life when everyone else is too busy arguing to notice that a patient is dying right in front of them.